visual assist.
Hey, what's up? It's Genesis and I hope you're doing well. In this video, I'm going to be showing you how I sidechain with Midi and Ableton and how you can do the same. But before we get into it, here's a quick disclaimer. This is not the only way to sidechain your drums, and there's no right or wrong way to do anything in your creative space. Everyone has their own way of doing things. Don't worry about being too simple or being too technical, because in the end, if it sounds good, then it sounds good. And if you don't like it, then that's okay too. So without further ado, let's get right into it. So for this example, I'm going to be using a sample from my VIBIN sample pack as the sound source that I'll be sidechained, and you can get this on my website, link in the description below. I'll be using this sample in particular. And for the drums, I'll also be using samples from my Drum Bombs kit, which you can also get in my website, link again in the description below. And I'll be using these samples in particular. And this is how the project file sounds like right now. Right, so let's start off with this MIDI channel which has this drum chain rack. So the way this is constructed is that I have a drum channel where I house all my drum samples in this drum rack, as I've shown earlier. All these samples. And I also have a sidechain channel which has a scale MIDI effect and a sidechain AD group. This sidechain AD group generates a sidechain signal and consists of a wavetable, and it sounds like this whenever I play any note. And these macros determine the attack of the sidechain signal, as well as the decay of the sidechain signal. So I can get really short triggers or really long triggers if I wanted to. I also have this scale MIDI effect to choose which drums in my drum rack trigger the sidechain signal, and by default I have it set to C and E, which is where I usually have my kick drum and snare drum. Of course I can choose which other drums can trigger the sidechain output. So let's say I want this snap sound that is played on D3 to trigger the sidechain signal. I can have that happen. And I can remove the snare, but still have the kick drum and snap. Or maybe the hi-hat for some whatever reason. The sidechain signal is also velocity sensitive. So if you want to have a more specific sidechain trigger, then that's there for you, or for me as well, I suppose. And after this drum chain rack, we lead into the sidechain receiver, which is this compressor. Before I demonstrate how this works on this end, I'm going to quickly record a drum pattern. And I'll quickly loop that. So now we can focus on the affected signal. I'll just turn down the volume so you can still hear me. Right, we can focus on this affected signal right now, and I can choose how aggressive the sidechain can be with both the ratio and threshold values. as well as the attack and the release of the sidechain signal. If I want to get more surgical like this. I can also adjust the look ahead. And what the look ahead does is that it shifts the sidechain signal forward by either 0, 1 or 10 milliseconds if you want to get a cleaner sidechain sound. Sometimes having the look ahead set to 10 milliseconds and then adjusting the attack can help reduce very clicky sidechains. But with the way it's set right now, I think it's fine to just put it on 1 millisecond. Of course I can adjust the attack and release. Now the reason why I don't use volume automation is because with my style of producing music, I like to do a lot of variation with drums, and sometimes just like having to edit that every single time I make a change in my drum arrangement can get pretty tedious, as well as when I do some live finger drumming, which I do quite a lot. Having that live response really helps. And also another thing that some people might be wondering is like, why do I not have the sidechain signal go to complete -infinity volume ducking like this most of the time? And that's because I like to have the sidechain elements also some room to breathe. I don't want to fully cut them off. Yes, even though it may provide the punchiest sound for the drums, I also feel like it's choking the main sound a bit too much. I want to have an even balance. And you can probably hear that here. If I bring it back, there's still some punch to it, to the drums, whilst also giving some breathing room to the sample. Nice. Compare that to this. Sometimes the pumping effect is what you want, but most of the time for me it's not really what I want. I want a nice natural sound, and this is how I usually have it set up. And here's how it sounds without it. If you would like, you can get this drum chain rack for free on my website, link in the description below. And I'm also going to show you how simple it is to make this drum chain rack if you want to make it yourself instead. So I'm just going to delete all this real quick. Don't worry about the saturator, it was mainly there to give some color to the drums. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to get a drum rack and group it to get the drum channel out of the way. Next, I'm going to get a synth source. So that means you can pretty much use operator, analog, vital, serum, massive, synth 1, dext, or whatever kind of synth you like to use. But for my case, I'm going to use wavetable, mainly because it's included in Ableton, and also because you can adjust the curvature of the envelope pretty easily. So with this, we have the sidechain signal, and I'm just going to call this the sidechain trigger, and I'm going to change the release to something really short, let's say 10 milliseconds, and take the curve all the way down. I'm going to change the sustain to -infinity, so it's just only going to be an attack and decay stage. Next, I'm going to create some macros for this wavetable, or whatever synth plugin you have. So I'm just going to group it with Ctrl G, open up the macro menu, and let's map the attack and decay, and let's adjust these minimum and maximum values to something that's appropriate. So let's say we'll have the maximum attack of the sidechain trigger to be 30 milliseconds and the decay to about 80 milliseconds. And I have the amp attack usually at 1 millisecond and then the decay to about 36. Even though we're already pretty much there, the only problem is that we have it so that all the cells in the drum rack will trigger the sidechain trigger. So the only thing that we need to add to prevent this is to add a scale MIDI effect, and that way, let's say we'll call this the trigger matrix, and this way we can choose which drum cells activate the sidechain. Let's say only the kick and snare. For me that's C and E usually. And there you go, there's our sidechain trigger. We can go to our affected signal, go to the instrument rack, and then select the sidechain pre or post effects. So as you can see right here, when I'm pressing C, it will trigger the sidechain. D, which does not have any sidechain linked, will not trigger the sidechain. And E, which is linked, will trigger the sidechain. All these other keys won't. And that's pretty much it. I'd like to give a big thanks to Fuel Storer for being my highest tier patron. You're an absolute legend. If you're interested in becoming a patron and getting access to perks such as exclusive content, behind the scenes, shoutouts and more, check the links in the description below. That's going to be it for this video. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, feel free to like and sub to buff my algorithm RNG, leave a comment if you have something to say, and maybe share it to someone you'd think would find this useful. You can further support me by checking out all my links in the description below. This includes my official website, my Discord, my Patreon, and other social medias. Once again, thanks a lot for watching, and stay creative. See you in a bit.